So the topic of this discussion today is approaching the automation singularity. Some of you may be familiar with this concept of the singularity. Maybe some of you may not, but we will dive into that during the presentation. So it's no surprise that companies are under ever increasing pressure to speed up their digital transformation initiatives. This is really happened in the last couple of years due to the pandemic, and it's only increasing, and we seem to be going from one crisis to another around the world. 94% of CEOs report the need to maintain or accelerate their already intense pace of digital transformation. Again, this was really started, there's no doubt looking back historically, we will say that this all really started during the pandemic. I mean, I think we may have thought previously it started with the birth of the internet in the 90s, but those of us, of course, now looking back say, wow, it's really the pandemic that kind of started this new pace of digital transformation. And we're really reacting as people involved in companies around the globe. We're really reacting to a fast-changing world. During the pandemic, we saw and continue to see, to some extent, supply chain issues. We have another global crisis going on, which kind of took a back seat, but is actually the most, probably our most dire global crisis, without a doubt, climate change. And now the entire world is facing this kind of massive inflation. For a while, it was thought to be related to just the pandemic and the supply chain issues, but it doesn't seem to be stopping. And for most countries, it's a pretty significant problem. And then there's this talent crunch. Everybody seems to have disappeared after the pandemic, and nobody's quite sure why people aren't getting back to work. What's changed? The mass resignation, mass retirement post-pandemic, and just a massive shortage of talent everywhere. And digital transformation is not easy. We would like to transform our businesses and become completely digital, but it's not easy. Well, why can't we just take advantage of all the technologies that are out there today to kind of help us deal with these ever-growing crises? Well, first of all, most companies are not this. They're not green fields. Can't just start from a blank slate. They were not born overnight. So as a result, we can't just sort of wish into existence the business model we would like to have. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, we used to say that SaaS businesses had this luxury. They were sort of greenfields, right? We remember Salesforce's disruptive campaign in the year 2000. I don't know if you remember this campaign. They came out with a campaign that said no software. It was completely disruptive, and their idea was, obviously Salesforce is software, but at the time, software meant something that was installed. It was installed on premise. It wasn't the new revolution was SaaS. It was, you're never going to own software. You're just going to have access to it in the cloud. And so Salesforce was able to set up, its business in a completely new way and disrupt the incumbents. Well, that was 23 years ago. Salesforce is now a legacy business. It now has the same problems that Oracle was facing back then, the same problems that it was set out to disrupt. And there are plenty of other examples like that. We think about Netflix. Netflix, interestingly, seems like it was a greenfield business that disrupted Blockbuster, but it actually really wasn't, right? They did begin with a disruption of mailing out DVDs, and you had this unlimited amount of time to hold on to your DVDs and then get them back. And then they were able to successfully navigate their way over to their truly disruptive business model, which was kind of online, on demand, access to media. But most of us are in established companies. Most of you are in established companies, and established companies are complicated. So let's look at some of the things that are holding us back as established companies. Well, first of all, you have data silos. All of your data did not just appear overnight. All of your systems did not just appear overnight. Your systems grew, and some came through acquisitions. You might be in a company that made acquisitions, or you had employees that came and went, and each employee came and had a new idea for a system, and so you acquired a new system, built a new system, bought a new system, and the result is that you now have lots of systems, and in those systems is data, and a lot of times it's not easy to get access to all that data in the right order, in the right way, in the right combinations with the different systems you have. And then we have customers, right? So of course, customers are what we want, but at the same time, customers hold us back. We have customers that are paying us for services that we might determine are no longer the services we want to offer going forward. Well, what do we do with those customers? We're probably relatively addicted to the revenue that those customers provide. They're the ones that got us to where we are today, but we look over our shoulder and we see a competitor coming out of nowhere, doesn't have customers, is able to anticipate where customers are going to be tomorrow. And so of course, they don't have that same difficulty. Then we have compliance and regulations. Later today, we have on the agenda a banking panel, and that'll be, of course, a very appropriate moment to talk about compliance and regulations, because obviously there's been a most recent banking crisis here in the US, and of course there's a number of banking crises going on abroad as well, and the topic of compliance and regulations always comes up. So as compliance and regulation comes out, we have to adapt the systems to meet these regulations. And that means that we can't do everything we would like to do the way we would like to do it. One of my very first businesses that I founded was an early internet business. It was an internet service provider business, and we eventually converted that business into a telephony business. And I remember at the time, there were regulations on the books that said you couldn't run voice over internet. Of course, now we're on a Zoom call. Everything is voice, in this case, voice and video over internet. All the established telcos now run all of their voice over the internet. But back then you couldn't do that. It was illegal in certain countries, in fact. So you have to deal with these regulations, and the regulations don't change as fast, of course, as we would like our businesses to change. Then we have people. We have people in our businesses. We have employees, we have leaders who have brought with them ideas of how to do things from previous businesses, have established ways of doing things, have created their own fiefdoms within the business. This is the way we do it. This is the way I've always done it. And convincing those people to make changes is also not difficult. So we have culture, we have established ways of doing things, and of course, changing out sometimes changing out the people is not a good option either, because they have a lot of established knowledge, and lots of things that they are doing is the way we want to be doing it, are good things. And then we have system proliferation. We just have massive amounts of systems, and that's related to the data silo problem that I mentioned above. And it's just every day a new system seems to be coming out, and we want to acquire it and use it in our business to gain some sort of advantage. But of course, it's also creating silos as we do that. In fact, according to data from Productive, the average enterprise has a whopping 364 SaaS apps. That seems like an extraordinary number, but if you go through and think about even just the your Google or Microsoft products, there's dozens in there. So we certainly have hundreds here at ProcessMaker, and new ones being proposed every day to solve some challenge that we have. So if we think about the view from the stakeholder being the customer, the partner, could be internal. Many of you are in larger businesses where you might be responsible for delivering a service across your enterprise. So your stakeholders might be internal, and those are your customers. We used to talk a lot, this term has sort of gone away a bit, but we used to talk about the service-oriented or SOA, service-oriented architecture view of the world. So, we don't, the stakeholder, the customer, the partner, the internal stakeholder doesn't really care that the data is residing in different systems. That stakeholder cares about the service they're expecting to get. They're applying to open an account. They're trying to get a loan. They're trying to purchase a product online. They want to do so with one click. They want to return a defective good. These are the processes they see. So they don't tend to see this kind of what to us on the inside may sometimes look like a relative disarray of systems. They want to look at it as something that flows towards them. So information going back and forth. And it shouldn't be disjointed. It should feel like one flow. And it's not just systems that are in there, but there are people. And in this traditional service view of the world, on the inside, inevitably, these processes involve people who are making decisions, approving, rejecting, evaluating, adding information. And this is really important. And this will kind of lead into the next part of this discussion or this presentation. So, what is the solution to deal with all of this complexity? Well, the solution that we've been talking about is ProcessMaker for sort of the last decade is really around process automation, process orchestration, and in the last few years, analysts have come up with a great new term. They're great at coming up with new terms, and that's hyperautomation. And hyperautomation is the best way to create this process as a singular process, bringing together the different types of technologies we have. So uniting APIs into systems to get data, looking at documents through intelligent document processing, using RPA, robotic process automation, to execute certain tasks, and using standard forms and interactions with people. So people are part of those processes. And when we bring all of this together, we call this hyperautomation. And ProcessMaker has developed and continues to develop its well-known ProcessMaker platform, which is really a hyperautomation suite. So what does hyperautomation look like from our view? What pieces of that do we do? Because not everybody does everything. And so if you're looking to solve some of these problems, it's important to understand what ProcessMaker does and does well. So RPA, we do believe, is part of any kind of process automation. That is not something we do today. We partner with leading process robotic process automation companies in order to add RPA into processes today. For connectors, or what we call intelligent or iPaaS, we have a lot of that built into ProcessMaker, but we also look to partner. So a lot of our larger customers will use platforms, iPaaS platforms, ESB platforms, basically suites of connectors, something like a MuleSoft or a Dell Boomi. Process modeling. We do process modeling, but we do process modeling in order to automate processes. And so we may also partner with process modeling companies, because many of you may model your processes. There are specialized suites just for modeling and not for execution. And then case management. We do case management in ProcessMaker, but there are also very specialized products for case management. What we do in a full-featured way today is our forms capability. IDP, as of late last year, we acquired a wonderful company and technology based in the Netherlands called Doculair. We've now incorporated that into ProcessMaker, and it's ProcessMaker IDP. And it's one of the unique advantages that ProcessMaker offers, that when you come to our process automation orchestration suite, you have IDP included. IDP is the way to interpret unstructured documents and data, PDFs, emails, lots of different types of formats of information, and extract meaningful structured data from it, so you can push that into your processes and take advantage of that information. Document management, something that we also now offer as a part of our system. We always stored documents, but we never really had document management. Thanks to the new DocuLayer acquired capabilities, we now have that as well. And of course, the web forms is a core part of ProcessMaker. You're used to seeing forms as part of your process, as part of the process automation. But the truly core part of ProcessMaker, if I had to say what is ProcessMaker doing, it is the orchestrator of the automation. So whether it's an endpoint to a system that you're connecting to, whether it's a person that you want to nudge to take a decision on something or evaluate something, whether it's information you want to go grab from another system, what we all need in all of our systems is this orchestration element. And that comes with the business process model or the business process map that you build and then run as part of your processes. So that's our view of hyperautomation, what we're delivering to the market today. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your position, our customers see this very differently. We, of course, see that core orchestration as the most important thing that a customer can be doing to improve and automate their businesses, but customers tend to see something else at the center of their universe. Now, this is changing. Again, it's because of that proliferation of the SaaS apps that I mentioned earlier. When you have hundreds of apps, it's hard to start identifying a center like it was, say, 10 or 20 years ago. But if you have an SAP as your core ERP, if you have an Ellucian as your core SIS, Student Information Service, if you have a QAD as a manufacturer or some other sort of industrial company as your core ERP, or Jack Henry or Fiserv as a bank, these are what you call your core systems. The banks literally call them core systems. Other industries tend to call them ERPs, or again, SIS, as I mentioned. And for most businesses today, most businesses that are established businesses, these are the core systems. And so things tend to revolve around them. One, they usually have been around the longest. Two, they're storing the most sensitive data. They're storing the accounting data, the data that we really don't want people to touch. The fidelity of the data overtakes any ability to manipulate it in terms of what we want these core systems to do. We don't want account balances to be easily modified. We don't want part numbers to be easily changed, or GL codes to be added on a whim, or student grades to be just modified at will. So our customers then see this as the center of their universe, and they still have these same issues now. They still have to deal with customers and partners. They still have to deal with compliance and regulations, people, data silos from the other SaaS apps they have, and the proliferation of those SaaS apps. So in this scenario, we really like to think about ourselves, and we like to help our customers understand that these core systems tend not to have evolved very fast. So they're not terribly modern, and they don't tend to modernize very quickly. And so really the cog you see around them, in this case, is ProcessMaker. Your orchestration engine is ProcessMaker. Your modernization engine, the way you modernize the legacy core, is ProcessMaker. And we believe you should be using ProcessMaker to deliver to the customers and partners the types of service-oriented views of activities that they need. So if they need a new way to apply to be a partner, to become an approved vendor, then that's something you would do with ProcessMaker. A new regulation comes out, your core is not going to change fast enough. You can make those changes in ProcessMaker and let ProcessMaker interact with your core and manage that process as a service. Same thing with people, and the same thing with other types of SaaS apps. As you look to stitch these SaaS apps together in a meaningful way across a process, remember that service-oriented architecture view from the stakeholder who doesn't care that we have all these systems. They just want a meaningful, unified, simple, and usually quick experience of interacting with a process. But all of this said, now there's a massive game changer out there, and it's AI. Right? There's no way we cannot talk about it. Most of us know ChatGPT 4 was released last week. It's the only thing anybody tends to be speaking of. So the rest of this presentation is really going to be about how does this affect that story, which seemed to make so much sense up till now to us, to our customers, to you. It's a digital transformation journey that we could all kind of understand. But let's think about AI and how that's going to affect this. So remember this guy? He's still around, of course, still very successful. Mark Andreessen, this is the younger version of Mark Andreessen. This is around 2000. He had a famous saying that software was eating the world, and that was in 2011. And since 2000, we've been developing really beautiful interfaces. That's the idea of software eating the world. We've just had more and more elegant and beautiful interfaces. And we didn't really think about it at the time. We thought about it as, hey, we just want better ways to use software. But there was something that was happening because of that. And I think this is kind of an interesting way to look at the way software has kind of taken over the world. It's that in reality, we had these beautiful interfaces, and my kids have one of these. At one point had on the phone one of these kind of mirrors you hold up to your face, and it makes your face distort, and they would always try to hold it up to my face and get my face to look funny. If those of you who have kids might know what I'm talking about. And in reality, again, that's the perfect example of something that is just an enticing interface. And this case, kids love to use that and hold it up to people's faces. But what's that software about, really? And what's all this other software about? It's really about collecting data. So in that case, it's facial recognition data. But as the interfaces got better at capturing data, voila, we captured a lot more data and more data. And then the interfaces became so good, they were wearables. We're talking about IoT devices. We're talking about Fitbits. We're talking about things that now are part of us and will become literally embedded in us. And in some parts of the world already are, in fact. And so now the interface is so good, there is no interface. It's just literally data collection. So data, of course, is exploding. All of this is what made AI what it is literally today, last week, tomorrow. We needed that period of time where we were just collecting data, and software made it easy. The interfaces got better. People went out and we didn't even think about it. We were collecting all of this extra data. So as that data proliferated, because of the software interfaces, effectively, the user has now become less important. Once we have all of the data and we know how this data gets produced, we literally know how everybody is doing everything. We no longer need people to tell us how that's happening. And this is what's really changing the world. So people are becoming less important because now we have so much data. And with so much data, we have the ability through AI to interpret that data and understand what's going on. We don't need people to tell us what's going on. And this is a kind of a scary moment for many. It's a moment of an incredible change. You've heard it, you're hearing it every day, and I believe you can't hear it enough because it's going to change things so much. But 400 million to 800 million individuals could be displaced by automation by 2030. That's from McKinsey. That's a big number. And think about it, it's happening, right? So it used to happen really slowly. We had the horse and buggy in the 1800s, early 1900s, the Model T. Then we had some assisted AI sort of assist cruise control, then lane control. And of course, the idea, and has become very clear, everybody understands cars will be self-driving, and we're there. Cars are self-driving. It's not completely massive yet, but every day there's more out there, and we will get there. It's pretty obvious now. Weapons systems. We used to need soldiers to, just go out and fight in the battlefield. But now the U.S. Army now has systems that actually lets AI find the best route to a target. So you can imagine it's only a matter of time before AI both sets the target and the route to the target. You can imagine then eventually AI will be doing preemptive strikes. Why would we even decide if AI could, at some point, AI will decide, should we make it preemptive to strike? And maybe it will just go and do it itself. Pretty scary thought. So moments of human decision-making in our business processes are also shrinking. So bringing that back down to the things that each of us is dealing with on a kind of daily basis in our business. So, think about the history of productivity tools. In the 90s, it was all about Office. And what was Office all about? It was about making an individual more productive. That's what Word, Excel, PowerPoint did. And then we saw that there was kind of a need. Well, we've now got people in organizations and they're going back and forth. They're using a lot of these tools and they're going back and forth to their master systems. And then, those of us involved in the process automation revolution, we like to sort of claim some credit here that then it was all about making the interrelation between the people in organizations more efficient. So if I'm sending a task to somebody, how long does it take that person to do it? And that was, here we have a BPMN diagram, and you can see the people and the systems involved. So kind of better organization of that. And now we've added in the last couple of years, robotic process automation. Let a robot do some of these tasks. And RPA, some people will claim that that's AI, but that's not AI. This is really just simple scripting. And now it's AI, but specifically AI in decision making. So going from that driver assist to actually letting the AI drive the car. AI, that is literally thousands of decisions a second or millions of decisions a second. So it's that thing we consider that yes or no decision in a lot of ProcessMaker processes. So letting AI make those decisions. And this, comes to sort of one of the great kind of thinkers in this area, Ray Kurzweil, for those of you who recognize him, and his concept of the singularity, the idea that once the singularity has been reached, machine intelligence will be infinitely more powerful than human intelligence. And the moment that happens, then a couple moments later, you're talking about a massive geometric progression, and AI can then learn by itself. So once we sort of hit that point, there's really no turning back. And his original date for that was 2045. And it now looks like it'll actually happen quite a bit earlier. So again, the corollary in our business to this idea of the singularity is that in digital automation, in business process orchestration, it becomes the complete removal of human decisions from the business process. So of course, there's the scary side of this of, well, wait a second, that means potentially loss of jobs, but it means a lot more loss of jobs if your business goes out of business because you're unable to compete with your competitors. And so that's why really none of us can escape the continuous competitive nature of improving our business processes. So what does this mean? Well, let's look at a simple case. Here we have a typical purchase request, modeled in ProcessMaker, built and automated in ProcessMaker. But let's look at this a little more closely, and we see there's two moments here for where a human is involved. One is in a review, and one is in an approval. And most of you can relate to this because most of you are dealing with these sorts of processes in your businesses and probably automated in something like ProcessMaker, if not ProcessMaker. And then there's even another moment, which is the start. So somebody had to decide to start this purchase request. They basically filled out a form in most cases to start the business process of the purchase request. But that's going to change. We can remove all of those steps. We know when stock runs low. We can anticipate. Amazon often already does and nudges us. And we can make sure that these processes start on their own. And those reviews, if we have thousands, again, think about the proliferation of data. If we have thousands of times this is executed, then we can, we know how best to execute these. We can let that happen. Case in point, we often talk about a use case of ours at CUNY. We reduced from 5 months to 19 hours the transfer of credit process. Huge success story, led to much improved student health. They know when they can graduate. They know what courses they need. Just a massive, they won massive awards in the CUNY system from 5 months to 19 hours. But even that, that's going to seem ridiculous in probably just a couple of years, if not less. that shouldn't go to 19 hours. It will tend towards 0. It'll happen in milliseconds, and it should. Why would we wait for somebody to approve a transferred credit when we know, we have the data, we know exactly what credit we don't need to send that to the chair of the math department to decide, what's the equivalency for Math 101 from another institution. We should have access to that data. So to wrap up here, the idea is that your process orchestration engine should soon do all of this for you. It should get you to milliseconds in your business processes. And if you are the first in your industry to be able to do that, you will be successful and you will become the leader in that industry. And it is now a race. And we all have that enormous pressure to get there. And our commitment is that ProcessMaker will do this all for you. We will help you get to this. And how will we do this? We'll do this through AI-enabled process automation. That is where ProcessMaker is headed. That is ProcessMaker.